Welcome to Health Professionals Outside the Box podcast. In this series, I'll be talking to health professionals who've leveraged their professional skills to pursue alternative income sources, alternative careers, and entrepreneurship. We will gain insight into their motivations, experiences, and challenges, and learn how we too can carve our own path to finding purpose, fulfillment, and financial freedom. I'm your host, Fee. Thank you for listening. Welcome back to this episode of the podcast. Joining me today is Silja Litvin. She's a psychologist, CEO, and founder of a digital mental health company called PsychApps. She also developed an emotional fitness application called EQ. Silja, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. Can you tell us about yourself and your professional background?
Yes, so I'm a psychologist, and I was just going down the normal route of studying and then starting to work. And when I'm actually half German, half American, so I moved to London in 2013, and I started working with the NHS. And when I was working with the NHS, I was really, really surprised to meet clients who had been waiting for 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get 6 sessions of CBT. And it occurred to me that you learn all about diagnostics and treatments and symptoms when you study psychology, but you don't learn about the healthcare system. And I started to kind of deep dive into the healthcare system and realized with horror that even if I worked myself to the bone, I couldn't even scratch the surface of the mental health care needs that were out there. It's too late, it's too little, it's underfunded. And even if we got $1 billion tomorrow for the NHS, we wouldn't have enough people, right? And this was about the time 2016, 2017, when mental health desktop and computer mental health programs started emerging that were very effective, almost like face-to-face therapy or pharmaceuticals, but with no side effects. So I looked at what was happening in the app stores because people were slowly migrating away from desktop towards mobile on their private lives. And I thought, okay, what happens if you do a mental health app? And this was at the time when you'd go to someone and say, yeah, I like funding for a mental health app. And they say, oh, mental health will never be digital. I'm like, yes, it will. Anyway, so I went and I created our first mobile mental health application as part of my PhD thesis. I'm still working on my PhD. And we could prove that using it over 4 weeks significantly lowered depression and anxiety symptoms. And I was like, I'm going to save the world from depression and anxiety for like $9.99 a month or something like that. But the problem with mental health apps are attrition. People drop off like really, really badly. So on average, the American Psychology Association says people spend 2 minutes on a mental health app and then they delete it. It's not long enough to have an impact on your mental health. So this is when I thought, okay, we need to get people to stick to what's good for them. How do you kind of like hack the brain's reward system into doing something that's good for you, even though it requires effort? And if you're too depressed or anxious to get up and take a shower, the last thing you're going to do is do your mental health app or your homework, your CBT journal, your gratitude journal, and all the things you should be doing, right? So the audience that I am very interested in, which is young adults, 70% of them are casual gamers. So I said, what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to use all the tricks of the trade from gamification and use it to support people to be able to stick to mental health because it's enjoyable, because it's fun, because it's exciting. And that's exactly what we do with EQ.
Interesting. So that's how the idea of EQ came about. And
yes,
what's the demographic of your users?
So we designed the game with 18 to 35-year-olds in mind. So their consumer habits, their needs, but we actually have a little bit of an older following. So our average age range, like 50% of our players are between 23 and 40. We have players that we know of that are 72, and my niece is 11 and she plays the game. So anyone can play it, but it's specifically tailored for young adults. And this is mostly because they have so many life challenges, first relationship, leaving home, studying, first job, maybe first time having a child. But also that if you're going to develop a mental health issue, the first symptoms are going to usually emerge during this time range of your life. And this is the latest you need the psychological skills to be able to deal with those in a healthy way.
Mm. And it's a period of transition that's quite difficult and challenging for most sort of young adults, isn't it? Going from
Yes, absolutely.
suddenly being dependent to being independent.
Yes, exactly. All the things you don't learn, and all of a sudden you're thrown out there. And what tax return? What getting married? What having a baby?
I know, bills as well, council tax.
Oh goodness, yes. Yes.
So I read somewhere that you had a modeling career prior to going into psychology. So what led you to the path of psychology?
Well, I've wanted to be a psychologist ever since I was 12. My sister, for her birthday, got a book about body language, and it completely blew my mind that there was a science out there where you could learn why people did and felt and thought the way they did, including myself. And so that's when I decided I want to become a psychologist. And I guess I'm really lucky that the more I learn about psychology, the more interesting and the more passionate I get about it. So there were bumpers along the way. I was scouted when I was 16, and my mom was like, "Over my dead body, are you becoming a model?" And then I was scouted again when I was 18, and then I didn't need her signature anymore. So I traveled the world and lived the good life for about 17 years internationally.
Oh, right. Interesting. So with your company, Psych Apps, when did that launch?
I founded it in 2016. And then I would say we're really a proper company about 2019, because I didn't have the team together, and I am a psychologist, right? So I know all about psychology and clinical trials and product development, but I'm not a business person. So we got into the Techstars accelerator program, and they really pounded a lot of business knowledge into us. And then I found my co-founder, Vanessa Hirsch-Angus, who has a operations background, and she brought in the business side. And now we have commercial director who knows about sales and stuff like that. It was really, it took a while to put the right team together.
So going back to the fitness app, did you have any background or interest in tech prior?
No, not at all. I had no idea. And I do not have the brain for coding. There's a company in London, I think it's called Decoded, and they do full day seminars or workshops, and you can kind of dip your toe into coding, and you have to be very I can't remember the word, but if you have a comma in the wrong spot or a space in the wrong spot, your program won't work.
Oh, really?
And I'm more of a big picture person, right? Like I don't care about the comma if the comma's in the wrong place, but you have to. So I understand enough about coding to understand what is needed to be able to make the game good, but I could not do it myself. And I have a lot of respect for proper programmers and engineers and game designers.
I read on your website that it's the only game that boosts mental and emotional health in the UK. What makes the app unique and stand out from the crowd?
So we are the only game for young adults. And I have to also say that there are mental health games out there, but they are cognitive mental health. So memory, spatial reasoning, those are things, for example, Alzheimer's, dementia, or if you just want to train your memory and those kind of things, right? So that's cognitive psychology. We are the only game that I know of for young adults that specializes on emotional mental health. So anxiety, depression, resilience, and things like that. So the whole idea is that mental health products are really hard to stick to, and there's huge drop-off rates, and making it an experience that is pleasurable makes the likelihood that people will stick to an intervention much higher.
It's more engagement, sounds like.
A lot more engagement, exactly. And it doesn't feel like work. And it's actually backfiring a little bit, because some of our B2B clients, they say, "Oh, but there's no homework," or "There's no, where's the things that I have to do?" And we say, that's exactly what you don't have to do. It happens while you're having fun. And they're like, "Oh, something's missing." So it's the whole, that it's a proper game and not just, gamification put on top of things,
How did you fund the app?
We did our first clinical trial and validation that it's possible and it can be evidence-based and has an effect with our own funds. Then we did a very small friends and family round. And then we did a pre-seed round. So we are privately financed by angel investors at the moment, but we just started our fundraising and now we're going to VC funding.
I wasn't aware until I started doing some research that there are other hidden costs and associated costs that come with that. What other costs do you think people need to be aware of?
When publishing their own application, I would say what cost us a lot of money lately are our T's and C's, terms and conditions, our privacy policy or transparency policy. We have a 300-page GDPR and privacy document that is the biggest nightmare you can imagine.
300.
Yes, it's absolutely, and it is quite expensive. Then server costs, being able to collect data and safely store it in the right servers in the right countries and everything, being HIPAA or GDPR compliant is very expensive. Every time you pull and send data, it costs. You can rack up costs that way. And then you have to do updates all the time. We work very closely with our clients and we get feedback all the time and we act upon it quite fastly. So they would say this picture has moved and it's over the text. I can't read the text or something. And then we have to have the team. We can't just build it and throw it out. It's not a product like that. It's live.
What sort of team did you need to build to help you, to assist you with it?
Yeah. So when you design a game, it's a little bit more complicated than your average app because you have to have lots of different designers, different developers. So we're designing on an engine called Unity, and it's a typical game engine. It's specifically made for games and 2D and 3D and things like that. So you need a Unity developer. Then you need a back-end developer to be able to collect the data and set up the data sets and everything. Then you need your typical script developers. So you need a whole team of developers with different skill sets that all need to work together to make the game work, the front end, the back end, connecting those two. And then we also have a dashboard to represent our players' well-being. So that also needs a developer. Then we need a web designer. It's a whole list.
Sounds like a whole list of people that you need to engage.
I mean, the first application that we did, we only did it on iOS. So we only used Apple products and we didn't have a proper backend. We only collected data through information on the side. So that was about 3,000 hours of one person working on it. Oh, wow. So it is manageable. Mm-hmm. If you're a native app developer, Apple developer, you could have probably done it faster. So the person who's developing was not an Apple fan and cursed my name every day. I think that it depends on the platform and how interactive you want to have it and how many. Then you need designers, of course, and content writers and game testers and lots of people.
How long did it take you from thinking about the idea to then launching the app itself?
Well, let's take this updated version that just launched about 7 weeks ago, the next generation EQ game. We had a workshop in February 2000 and, just before COVID. Was that 19 or 20? This is 2020. Yeah, just before lockdown, we had a workshop with the game designer, the developer, CTO, the content writer. They all came to London and we sat down for a week and we developed the draft of the game. And we have been working full time on it ever since. And we launched it about a year later. So a whole year of developing, designing, and then starting to implement. I have to say, though, because we did our round wasn't huge. If you had given us 50 million, we could have done it faster.
Right. Okay.
So with our CTO used to say, you can have it cheap and slow or have it fast and expensive, but you can't have it cheap and fast. Yeah.
On your website, though, you've mentioned that you've had partnerships with Unilever, Mental Health America, Resilience Research Center, and Sense. How has working in partnership with those organizations contributed? Yeah,
they've been immensely important. So Mental Health America was the very first mover to onboard us with the old version of the game in 2018, I think. So they were very innovative and they knew, so they have about 3 million visitors on a website a month, and they knew that their younger audience was looking for products that wasn't your typical, CBT journal or something like that. And so they onboarded us quite quickly and drove a lot of downloads. So we have now globally over 300,000 organic downloads, and a lot of them came from Mental Health America. So that was very important. Then Unilever actually scouted us through their People Data Center, and they looked at over 1,000 applications that they chose us to do their partnership with. And of course, when you work with a global number one FTSE 500 company, you have a lot more wiggle space and impact and growth opportunities than if you're a teeny weeny little startup with 3 enthusiastic people, So I think that the general global attitude of sustainability and adding value to your customers beyond a product is being led by companies like Unilever, and they are absolutely key for us as a company.
And in terms of, so I've seen that you've stated that it's scientifically tested, it's been successfully tried and tested based on evidence, and you've used some sort of outcome measures like resilience, personal development, anxiety, interpersonal relationship. How do you make sure, or how do you ensure that the outcome measures are maintained?
First of all, you don't change things without testing them. And if you change them, you have to test. And right now with the new version, we have a dynamic chatbot that we can populate with any clinical questionnaires. For example, I'm not sure if you are aware of the PHQ-8 or 9.
Yes.
It's the depression inventory. It's very often used in the NHS and in the UK in general. This is one of the outcome measures we use because we know it's validated and it's used all over. People know it, and it's quite short and concise, which is very good. And what we are doing with the dynamic chatbot is it allows us to test features within the game and be able to see if a psychological skill that we teach in the game actually has a clinical impact on the overall outcome. And if we change it, if that impact grows or drops, and that way we can iteratively get stronger and stronger effects by moving the game clinically forward.
Did you notice any changes in user engagement last year at the peak of COVID?
Yes. Yeah. So we had 160% spike in downloads after the first 2 months of the lockdown. And the anxiety rates and depression rates went up, specifically for women. And resilience kind of went down a bit for both men and women. So you can really real time watch people struggling more and more with mental health.
Do you provide any resources for further support?
Yes. So the game itself is a resource, right? And it has an intervention. But in the dynamic chatbot, when you fill out the questionnaire, it gives you feedback on your scores. And then it says, for example, it looks like you may be struggling with depression. Here are some further tools or resources that you can do by yourself. And right now, we are triaging them to a program that we developed with Unilever, which is and the Resilience Research Center, which is a 14-day resilience challenge. And it's also evidence-based, and it's like a booklet that you can do exercises every day. When we work with corporations, we triage the people who flagged high depression, high anxiety, low resilience to the company EAP, the Employee Assistance Program, and to other resources. So people can either, sign up with a private GP, or they can go straight to their EAP for help if they're flagged high.
All right. Okay. And I noticed the app is free. How does the company monetize it?
So it depends which app you've seen. Have you looked at EQ, the emotional fitness game, or EQ Next Generation Lodestar?
I think it's the emotional fitness.
Okay, so you see the old version, the previous version, and this was kind of like a, I guess, proof of concept, and we did our research mostly on it. And this was one of the problems, that we didn't have a viable business model. So it's free to play with in-app purchases. And the next version of the game is a 1-year program, and it's a subscription model. So you can have a free dip your toe into the game, build your avatar, understand the lore of the story, play a few levels, and then it says if you like it, you can buy a subscription. But before that, it was in-app purchases. If you wanted more content, then you could buy something within the game.
Okay. All right. What other ways do you think people can monetize the app?
Well, with a mental health program product, you have to be very careful because vulnerable people are more likely to make financial decisions that aren't very healthy for them. So potentially, if you were very evil, you could have in-app advertising and target those who are scored higher and have a probably pretty good conversion rate. So that's one of the reasons why we decided against advertising, to make it free with advertising, is because first of all, it interrupts the flow. And second of all, it's ethically questionable. We don't want to put our population in that position. And then in-app purchases is also something that you have to aggressively pursue. So you have to get people in a position where they think they need to buy something to be able to, play like Angry Birds when you run out of bubbles, and you have to like, oh, okay, I'm going to pay $1.99 for extra bubbles so I can pop this row, And we just felt that we wanted to offer quality, safe quality in an ethical way that we could, stand behind.
What is emotional fitness?
So emotional fitness is having the ability to endure and grow your emotional mental health. So you know how when you're not fit, like for example, you've been a couch potato for a month or two, and then you go on a walk and you can barely go up the hill and you're huffing and puffing. It's the same way a little bit with mental health. So if you educate yourself about mental health, if you learn psychological skills that are needed to be able to deal with cognitive processes and things like that, then you will be more able, if life decides to throw you a curveball, to catch that and to be able to deal with it. It doesn't mean you're not going to experience pain. You're not going to get laid off of work and be scared about your future. You're not going to have heartbreak when you break up with a partner, but you will be able to process that in a healthy way.
So it should be incorporated into our daily routine. So fitness routine, physical fitness, emotional fitness should be part of it.
I wish the skills that are taught in my game should be taught at home and at school from 4 years onwards. These are our skills that we should all know, and the world would be a lot better place with a lot happier people if this was common knowledge.
Do you do any clinical work?
No, I haven't since about 2018 now. So I worked privately for a while, then I worked with the NHS Nelft department for a while. And then I've been completely startup since 2018.
What have been the most difficult moments that you faced whilst running your company?
I think there were 2 times where I thought, okay, I'm going to have to close the company. And I've had a very expensive and stressful hobby. And it didn't work out, and everything I've been working for and all the people that supported me. And I'm going to have to tell them, I've been wasting their and my time. And then serendipitously, it actually proved that the next level was much better than I had been before. But there was 2 times where I really thought, okay, this is the end, and I need to make my peace with it.
How did you navigate that?
Yeah, I really said, I have to practice what I preach. I have to do my breathing exercise. So when I get anxious, I have breathing issues. When I realized that, I go, okay, now it's time for me to kind of like slow down and watch my thought processes and things like that. I went back to my supervisor and had about half a year of supervising sessions, like therapy. That helped a lot, and just kind of understanding that even if trying to detach my identity from the company, like, because I could really say honestly that I have given it my all. I did everything that I could, and if it doesn't work out, then I can look back and say, okay, it was good. I didn't slack or sleep or make bad decisions or something like that. And so that really helped. And I think it put me in the mind space to also see the other opportunities, right? So in my case, it's like when God closes a window, he opens a garage door,
I think you're better off to have tried than to live with the thoughts what if you hadn't tried?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And what would you recommend in terms of psychiatrists or psychologists that work with clients one-on-one? How would you recommend that they protect themselves from being impacted by the, client's difficult feelings or distressful emotions whilst maintaining their empathy?
Definitely supervision. I mean, this is something that I think all psychologists and psychiatrists know and maintain. I think you even have to, otherwise you won't be able to keep your license. But to just keep on, therapy is not necessarily just when you're in full crisis mode, but it's like personal development as well. And being able to speak to your supervisor about your clients and what it triggers in you yourself is crucial for being a good therapist. So always keep on working on yourself and sticking to supervision.
Okay. And what does the future for Psych Apps look like?
Well, if everything goes well, knock on wood, right now we just started our sales process, and it's about scaling now, getting out there, because the market is swamped with mental health tools, but only about 2% of them have actually been through clinical trials, right? So that is a distinguisher that we pride ourselves upon. And being able to understand who we are, what we are, that we can help, and that we're a good product that people actually stick to and love. That's what is happening right now. So I think these next 4 or 5 months are going to be a real predictor of our future, like how big we can get.
Especially with the way things are now, with the number of people being affected by mental health conditions, it continues to rise, and there aren't enough resources to cope with the demand. I see it in the work that I do. We have an increased number of mental health referrals because of COVID. So anything, I think any interventions that are released to support with that would be really helpful and beneficial. What do you do to relax?
I actually, I go full vegetable. I go to the couch and I either watch Netflix or I read a book. Every once in a while, I do a little bit of social media scrolling, but it's mostly, and I sleep as much as I can. So I'm really big on sleep hygiene and going to bed early and having, process to go to sleep. So I think sleeping and relaxing while not using my brain are probably the two major things for relaxation, and being able to switch off, because you're always on, you're always getting messages and emails, you're always seeing things that relate and everything, and to be able to actively say, okay, I'm not going to look at my emails, I'm not going to respond, I'm offline now. That's very important.
Well, thank you so much for coming to talk to me. And listeners, if you haven't, go and download the app, the Emotional Fitness app. Initially,
yes, please.
If you just wanted to get an idea, get a feel of what it's like. I've completed level 1. That was last week.
Ooh, nice.
And I rated high on openness. So it was quite interesting that it shows you the character traits of an open person and the types of careers that would be more suited to that person. So I found that interesting. Where can people connect with you if they wanted to, reach out and ask a few questions?
I think the easiest probably would be on LinkedIn. So it's just my name's Leah Litvin, and then on LinkedIn. So that's probably the easiest.
I'll put the links at the end of the show. And lastly, what have you learned about yourself through this whole journey? Yes.
So I have learned that I am very resilient and a lot more persistent than I thought. And I like to joke that my spirit animal is a cockroach. I'll be the last one. Yes, exactly. I'm not a dolphin or a jaguar or anything. No, I'm a cockroach. I'll be the last woman standing.
Oh, I like that. Well, Silja, thank you so much, and I wish you all the best with your company.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like the podcast, please subscribe, rate it, and review it on iTunes, as this can help others find it. If you'd like updates on the podcast, you can follow the pages on Instagram or Facebook by searching for Well Restorer. If you have any questions or would like to give some feedback, you can send an email to info@wellrestorer.co.uk. Thanks once again. Take care.